Recording is in progress. I hope
Mhm.
everybody knows that. They sent me a text yesterday saying, tonight we're doing movie night with Anne Heche. We've got 6 days, 7 nights lined up and Catfight. I said, well, those are two different freaking movies.
Yeah,
Take a break in the middle.
yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to ask you about that actually. Well, let's start off with 13 minutes because I was really, really moved by the film, and in particular about, I mean, certainly the storm aspect of it, but it felt to me almost like a three-act play. You know, you have the beginning and then the 13 minutes, the storm itself, which is so
Yeah,
devastating, and
yeah,
after.
yeah.
And I'm very curious because in this film, you say things that you probably don't agree with, you probably don't feel. Um, but the movie seems to suggest that, you know, after the storm, you know, with the whether it's a physical storm or sort of a metaphorical one,
That's right. That's
uh,
right.
some people change, you know,
Yeah,
some people kind of rise to the occasion when the
yeah.
chips are down, and some people don't. Some people
That's
stay exactly the same.
one of the hardest
So
things in the world for me to be able to embrace, but it's true. Some people just don't change. Even when they are faced with death, there are some people who don't change. And until these stories can stop being told, I will continue to be a person that becomes a part of the storytelling because I can embrace and hold. It's not Anne Heche needing to have fans when I go on camera. It's Anne Heche telling stories and being given the opportunity to play characters like this. Trace and I weren't looking at like, hey, I hope you like us. He's got a lot of fans from his music, and I got a lot of fans from my work. But together, we could tell a story that was really important with Will on board to do something that to shock people enough into looking at the concept. 20 years ago, I stood up for the right to love who you want to love, no matter what, regardless of gender and without judgment. Unfortunately, that was a part of the stepping stones that we need to take in this process, but we're not done yet. And that's why I think Lindsay and I really connected over this, because I said, I'm willing to take her on. Let's do it. Let's show what it is to not be on the other side yet, so that we can create an emotional context so that people want to create change within themselves. And however long that takes is how long I'm going to fight.
what do you think about that? Because you filmed this just I think just before COVID,
We did,
and
right, the month before, yes.
I know I see a lot of those parallels too. You know, I see this as a time of change
You are
and people rising or not rising to the occasion. What have
love
you found
to
in your
see that. There is a
experience? Do you
parallel.
think,
I like how you're drawing them. Yes,
do you find that? I mean, you're doing
I
work
do.
here on screen, certainly Better Together with your podcast as well too. Do you feel like people, the residents all sort of meet up together? You know, the storm doesn't care who's on what side, and you know
Exactly
they're all
right.
bounded. But have you found that people right now have really risen to the occasion? Have they been better together, or do you think some are sort of not quite getting that yet?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said some people change and some people don't. I mean, of course, I want the pool of conscious thinking to broaden. That's why we do movies like this. That's why I agree to do roles like this, so we can continue the conversation till where the entire pool is in a conscious, loving thought about others. And that's what we fight for. Change doesn't happen in a day, certainly. And I think it frustrates some of us. We think we're on the right side, but everybody thinks they're on the right side. The fact of the matter is there is no side to humanity. It is one thought, and that is
Mm.
a loving consciousness for an individual spirit to rise how they want to rise in their most fabulous self. That's what we support on Better Together with Ann and Heather. It's what we want to talk about in the world. I want to talk about that in the world, and I've been doing it since I was a kid, and I will continue. And hopefully we join arms as we are all come through and are still working through a disaster that's happening globally. And I think movies like this give us a chance to say, you know what, we can overcome this, but we do have to be strong enough to make the unpopular choice sometimes to live in
Mm.
love. And we want that to become the popular choice.
I didn't want to draw too much back to your previous films, but one that jumps out is My Friend Dahmer, which I was just watching
Oh,
again. Came out
oh,
right after I had met you for the first time,
yeah,
and you know
yeah,
the idea of that film just to sort of to humanize Dahmer, I thought was so fascinating. You know, responding to the graphic novel, but even
yeah.
building that. And you know, when I'm watching a movie like that, when I'm watching a movie like this one, you really feel them. You know, my skin is crawling, and I'm in that moment. Um,
Unfortunately, that may be one of my talents, making people's skin crawl with the characters that I play. My Friend Dahmer really was, to me, a leaping off point to give some perspective to what I believe parents' responsibility is. We shot that in Akron, Ohio. We shot that in Dahmer's house, in the true house in Akron. And being there, living in and embodying what it is to be a mother that lives in duplicity. One facade on the outside and the interior creating a murderer. So to me, that was a very important thing to do. When I met with the director, I said, listen, I'm going to be a person who's going to tell you this. When you are a parent, you make a choice to bring someone into the world. It is your responsibility who they are. So if that person is making and destroying and hurting any other thing or being, then it falls onto the parents. It doesn't mean that there aren't choices that that child makes, but I did want to represent what it looks like to look in the face of a lie, and that is that mother, in my opinion.
What does the setting inform this film? You know, Oklahoma is such an interesting place. I didn't think that many movies have been shot there, but I found a few more. You know, you're going to be, I think, upcoming in Texas, but in the Panhandle of Texas.
Yes,
and
I am. I just got back from Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah.
What Remains, beautiful redemption story directed by Nathan Scoggins. We just got back a few days ago, and you know, it's really the beauty of my life that I get to go from these different characters, because if I had to live in Tammy, I wouldn't be Anne Heche, obviously. But to be able to go, and now I play a sheriff in Amarillo, Texas, that is really seeking the truth. And these are characters maybe that people understand that I would relate more to, but it's not about my relatability. It's about the storytelling that's important. So when Lindsay tells a story like this in 13 minutes, it really is talking about the human condition that happens before a disaster. We need to look at and live in loving harmony around what happens to people, and do whatever we can to get out of the judgment, so that we can live as a community with freedom to be who we want to be. And that's all I fight for.
Yeah. So by coincidence, perhaps, you just shot a movie with Peter that he had written and directed, and now.
Yes. Well, yeah, so I mean, one of the most complicated characters I've ever played. That's really two movies in one, as we look at it. And the success of that film has been a blessing to me, so that we understand point of view and perspective. One of the things I'm very interested in discussing, even if it's with Tammy in 13 minutes, I'm allowing people to look at Tammy with a perspective, I hope, and then make your own decision about what you would choose in 13 minutes. If your son opens up to you and talks about the truth of his life, what decision would you make? And she really does give us the opportunity to look at this story through all different perspectives and decide who it is that we are, and what would you do, mm-hmm. You know, if you were walking in these shoes. And they're not easy decisions for anybody, and I don't live in judgment for what people do. I live in a truth that I represent, and you can do anything you want with it. But I'm 100% pure. That living in loving kindness is probably the way to go to heal this planet.
People upcoming are really going to be enjoying this film and really responding to this film and really being moved by this film. I'm very curious, what's the last movie or the last show or anything that's had that effect on you? Something maybe that you were outside of and that you watched and just felt to your very core.
Well, I mean, this is, I feel almost embarrassed to say, because I think people have this on the tip of their tongues right now, what's going on with Squid Games, the Korean production, and talk about illuminating what is going on in Korea with the amount of, I mean, this is really talking about a world of poverty in the midst. Millions of people are devastated by what is going on in Korea. And their ability to show that through the torturous game called Squid Games is, to me, a look at society, a look at reality, a look at people that we need to open our eyes to, because more than not are suffering from poverty. We went through a lot with COVID. This is, I mean, I don't speak as eloquently as people do who study the folks of this world, but this planet is hurting. We have all been devastated. We need to help each other out. And what it is to have riches is free. We're free with love. We have free friendship. We have free kindness, and we have the ability to use whatever we have at our fingertips to help others. And I hope this movie encourages that as well.
I think that's so incredible. What you do on screen, off screen, talking to you is really meaningful. So thank you so much.
You are a sweetheart. Thank you. You bring tears to my eyes. You're so adorable. Thank you.